You're listening to Feel Good Astrology with Louisa Tanner Munson. To request a personal reading with Louisa, go to www.feelgoodastrology.com.
Hi, it's Louisa Tanner Munson, and this is part 7 of the Saturn Through the Houses series, where I look at the effect that Saturn has if you were born with it in the 7th house, and also what would happen when Saturn goes over your descendant, i.e. the cusp at the start of the 7th house, and actually goes through the 7th house. So how will Saturn affect that? I guess the first place to start is to consider what the 7th house is about, and it's about everyone that's not you. So as the ascendant and the 1st house represents you and nobody else, just you and how you come across to people, the 7th house and the descendant, which marks the start of the 7th house, represents everyone that's not you and all those people that are in your life. And the difference between the 1st and 7th house, obviously, there's a barrier. There's like you and not you. But whatever planets are in the 7th house, often is a projection of what we think we're not. So you'll find every person in the 7th house is something that you're not really. It's not really a part of you. It's seen as something that's separate from you. So it's always really interesting to see who shows up in your 7th house, because it's all to do with projection, and often a sign that we need to look within to find those qualities within us, because they're often qualities that we deny in ourselves. Anyway, I digress. So the 7th house shows everyone that's not you. So it's the natural rule of our partnerships. So the person that you will fall in love with and stay with, or partners, because it might be that you have several partners throughout your life, and they'll all be represented by the 7th house. It'll also represent your friendships. And also your enemies, the people who come into your life and often bug the hell out of you. Isn't it funny sometimes how our partners, when our relationships stop with them, or our friends, when our relationships stop with them, become our enemies, and the qualities that we first admired about them become the qualities that signed their death warrant. So it's another thing to bear in mind about the projection that goes on in the 7th house. So having Saturn in the 7th house shows a few things. On a personal level, you might attract quite serious and cautious types into your life. Maybe that's as a consequence of the fact that you're a bit reckless, or a little bit more fun and upbeat and whatnot, and that you need those kinds of people to come into your life for some cosmic karmic reason. So, at the very base matter of this, Saturn in the 7th house shows the kinds of people that you're attracting in, and they are responsible, level-headed, grounded, probably quite paternalistic. So they might use quite judgmental language if they're in a bad in a bad place in their life. They might use things like you should, you ought, you must, and those kinds of things. So you might feel a little bit like somebody who isn't an equal with the kinds of people you bring into your life. So you might find that you bring in quite a few bossy people into your life. If your Saturn person in your life is in a really good place in their life, then they'll be paternalistic in a really positive, nurturing way. So they'll probably want to take you under their wing. I guess what you need to watch out for is which kind of Saturn person you're bringing into your life. Because if they're the sort of nurturing they want to help bring you on, then that's also a sign that you really are ready to bring yourself on, and that you need to self-nurture. If the kind of Saturn person that you're bringing into your life is telling you off all the time, or pulling you up on things, then maybe it's also a message from our unconscious that we can do better, and that we probably do need to smarten up our act a little bit. So the 7th house is brilliant. It's a really great way of mirroring back what you need to know. But it doesn't help if you're stuck with Saturn in the 7th house, and all you seem to do is get the judgmental people around you, or friends who are bossy and things like that. So I guess the key to managing this kind of energy is understanding which flavour of Saturn you're attracting, and a lot of that will depend on Saturn's own aspects within your birth chart. Where Saturn has very positive aspects within your birth chart, you'll probably find that you just tend to attract quite reasonable and sensible and practical people who are maybe business types of people who are concerned with their status and having their life run smoothly. It can be really useful and beneficial having friends like that because it does tend to rub off. The kinds of people you socialise with and spend time with will have an impact on you and vice versa. So that's not such a bad thing, really. Having great people around you that you can rely on shows that, you might actually have quite a regular and quite brilliant life. If Saturn's aspects are quite tricky, i.e. you might have a T-square, an opposition, or with difficult planets involved, then you might find that you go through phases of having difficult people or people who boss you around and that you feel disempowered by. And with those, they're likely to show up in your life when an outer planet or a difficult planet is transiting your Saturn or the other planet involved in this aspect. So anything going over your 7th house is going to trigger that. So just be wary of that. Other things to bear in mind is like Saturn is quite a judgmental character. And needs things to balance out. So it might also be a message with the 7th house Saturn that part of your work in your life, because Saturn does represent the kinds of work we need to do in our life, i.e. personal work, life coaching type work, how you coach yourself. It might be that you need to look beyond the labels of friend, foe, partner and enemy. Because Saturn represents all three of those, and you can probably see that your enemy could have easily been your friend, etc., etc., and just really get some kind of think through what impact this might have on you. I guess a lot of it depends on what's going through your 7th house at any time. One thing I would say is you might feel a bit cut off from your friends and your partners, like that you are slightly different to them, in a way that creates a sense of isolation. But it's by no means an indication that you will be isolated in your life, just that you feel apart ever so slightly. Wherever Saturn lands itself, it shows where you're not quite connected on a real human level. It's where things sometimes stay a bit formal. So you might also prefer slightly more formal relationships rather than passionate fly-by-night relationships that start quickly and end quite quickly too. You prefer something a lot more respectable and a lot more durable. So that's really Saturn's effect if you're born with Saturn in the 7th house. Now, if Saturn is transiting, this is one of the major Saturn transits, and a lot of it depends really as to where your Sun is and where your natal Saturn is, because if your Sun or your natal Saturn's also in the 7th house, then this could be quite a difficult transit for you, because it's like a Saturn return happening, or Saturn going over the Sun. It really restricts your energy and ages you and makes you feel quite tired and under-resourced. So I'm hoping that's not the case for anyone listening. But if it is, this is a tricky time for you, where it feels like your relationships are going through a bit of a sort through, where you're sorting out the wheat from the chaff. A bit easier with the friendships, definitely easier with social media. You just literally go through everything and think, why are we friends? Is there a basis for this? Is this bringing me anything? And so you'll be able to sort through. But at some level, you're going to be sorting that through with all your friends, with your partner in particular, and also possibly reconsidering the status of people who you have already excluded from your life. So it's a very difficult transit, because, if you are in a relationship and it's an ongoing relationship that you're essentially happy with, it can represent a time when things just take a bit of a downward energy. It's not to say that they're going to go badly. Any relationship that is worth its salt, that is going to last, will persist beyond this transit. But any relationships that you've had doubts about and that aren't really coming up to scratch, any relationships where you're not really feeling fulfilled and you can't see how you can fulfill yourself within this relationship, will often peter out or fade away, or just end for some reason. And let's face it, that reason is you. Not because you're not the right for the relationship, but because you are at a stage where you're getting more conscious of what's right for you and what's wrong for you. And as Saturn goes over this, it makes you a lot more discerning and considerate about what you're going through and how you want to spend your life and who you want to spend it with. So it's actually a really useful transit, because any relationship that isn't really working to assist you in your growth and evolution will, have an out. Whereas when Saturn's going through other houses, it's not quite so obvious. And often when there's a relationship that's just trundling along, they're so inoffensive, that they don't necessarily get picked up on. So this is a real levelling and grounding aspect, having Saturn going through your 7th house, and it's quite common to feel very disconnected from pretty much everyone that you relate to during this time. So that can be quite upsetting if you're not ready for it. And my advice is to, I guess, leading up to Saturn going through your 7th house, is to really think long and hard about your needs, and just be really honest about them, about what you would like to see coming into your life, how you would like to relate to your partners. Think of it ahead of time, and try and think about it without blame. So not putting blame on your partner and saying, oh, he's not attentive enough. What you need to say is, I would like a partner that attends to me in this and this way. Because if you can see it clearly and without blame, and just, take ownership of your needs, then you're almost having a practice conversation with somebody, and you're almost allowing situations to come up. When you clearly state what it is that you want from life and how you'd like it to arrive, then life hears and seems to respond. So I really would advise, before you cut something off, is that you really consider your needs, because it is about your needs. All of your relationships are about your needs, your personal needs to discover another side of yourself that you can't see and that you project onto other people. So it is really useful and worthwhile taking a bit of time away from people who make it difficult for you to think that through. And if it means you need to back off and, I don't know, do some personal discovery, then that's what you need to do. It's worth doing that work, because if you are in a relationship that you do value, then you want to put in a few extra bits of stability to keep it going. Anyhow, this too shall pass is the sentiment I want to leave you on, because actually, if you think about Saturn crossing over a point, Saturn's energy can reduce things to zero almost. Not quite as zero as you might get with Pluto. Like Pluto really takes things to the ground zero. Saturn just wipes the slates quite clean. It cleans the karma, and it really sort of like helps you see things without your rose-tinted glasses on, which is quite important, especially for some people. Like me, I find a Saturn transit really useful, because my head's in the clouds a lot of the time, or literally in the stars. But for a lot of people that are grounded, it can represent a time when it just seems all bar humbug. But it's worth doing, because it will wipe clean the slate. But you don't have to start again. But the great thing about Saturn is it moves really, really slowly. I say it's a great thing. When you're going through one of these transits, it's quite a painful thing, because it takes so long. But essentially, within 2.5 years, Saturn should be out of your house and into the next house, changing your life in that area. But it creates a kind of fresh slate. And if you think about Saturn think about it in periods of 7 years, because it comes round to its original place. It's called your Saturn return, when Saturn goes back to where it was at the time of your birth. And it takes 28 to 29 years, approximately 29 and a half years. It really depends on exactly when you were born as to how long it takes to come round. And there are intervals. So you've got 7-year intervals, which match with Uranus changing signs every 7 years. In fact, I've recorded a podcast on this about the 7-year cycle. So listen to that if it's of interest. But when Saturn has cleared the ground, it carries on, and every 7 years you've got another sort of epoch or another turning point. Now, if Saturn's just gone over one of your major turning points, i.e. your descendant or your midheaven or your ascendant or your IC, the part of your home, then you've got a kind of 7-year clean slate to grow your life in a more meaningful way. So if you've wiped the slate clean from your relationships, it's allowing that space to bring in the right kind of relationship for you. And it might not be that you've wiped it clean and wiped your relationship and it's gone. It might be that you've just taken the relationship back to an earlier level and said, look, I want to build it up. And when Saturn wipes the slate, you have a real good chance of growing something. You're in a new growth cycle. So I really like to see Saturn in positive terms, even though it can be difficult. It's like lancing a boil. Once you get the gunk out, well, it's more Pluto to be fair, but it helps you to heal. You get rid of what you don't need, and then you can start building from what you've already got. So anyway, hopefully that's been useful. And if you're going through this and want to talk about it, then please do feel free to give me a shout. It's Louisa at feelgoodastrology.com, and you can reach me via social media as well. So hopefully you'll go through this transit in quite a nice way, and it won't affect you too much. Take care, and let me know. Let me know how you get on with it, or what happened when this happened to you, or how it's affected you if it's in the 7th house. I would really like to know, actually, because it's a very key point. Anyway, I am signing off now. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Feel Good Astrology with Louisa Tanner Munson, and this recording has been made possible by all you lovely supporters at Patreon. To request a personal reading with Louisa, go to www.feelgoodastrology.com.